Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dwayne Hopkins on the Academy Committee, and welcome and Happy New Year. We're looking forward to a good program today, but before we get there, I want to remind you that 2 weeks from today, Larry Rankin will be doing a program that he's calling The Irish Troubles and Ultimate Peace. And beyond that, we have something pretty interesting every 2 weeks for the rest of these next few months. One called The Scourge of the Caribbean, for example, so I'm anxious to attend that one myself. Today, of course, we have part 2 of View from Down Under by Dr. Deb Greiner. I gave her a nice long introduction last time, and she begged me not to repeat that. I'll just say that she is a native of Ohio, and her interest in pharmacy was developed while serving in the U.S. Navy. And it was developed to the point that she decided to get a doctorate in pharmacy, which she did cum laude from Howard University. And she's practiced pharmacy at just about every level of the distribution cycle. So we're looking forward to part 2 of View from Down Under, and here's Deb.
Thanks, Dwayne. Thank you very much. Before we get started, I would like to admonish the audience to put your phones on silent. Just, okay, you could put it on stun, vibrate, that'll work. So. It is a pleasure to be with you here today to talk about the second part of our voyage around Australia and New Zealand. The nice part of Australia and New Zealand is that most everybody has, well, a lot of people in this room have been there. And I have heard wonderful stories about people that have been there and seen the wallabies and the kangaroos and the koalas, and then in Australia and New Zealand, the fjords even that are there. So I didn't get to see the fjords. That port stop was abbreviated, but we did get to see a larger part of the country. So with no further ado, I do like this, and I'd like to start it over. The purpose of life is to live it, to taste, experience to the utmost, to reach out eagerly and without fear for newer and richer experience, Eleanor Roosevelt. So even though travel sometimes is not very comfortable, you get outside your comfort zone, it's not what you're used to, it's still so rewarding. So this is a repeat of the map of where our trip took us from San Diego down through the Hawaiian Islands, and then French Polynesia and Cook Islands, and then around Australia to include Tasmania, and then over to Sydney, and then we headed over to New Zealand. So the end of last presentation ended in Sydney. And once again, a reminder of just how big Australia is. You could see the United States, just about the same size. Europe, Australia is as big as the entire part of Europe. And New Zealand is comparatively small. But it is kind of funny to think that I'm going to go do Australia in 2 weeks, when it's as big as the United States, and we know how long it takes to get places and to actually see things. But it was a challenge we were up to. And this is our trip from Sydney over to Australia. Quite lovely. The seas were not as tempest-tossed as I thought they would be, but still enough that we had to truncate that one stop at the fjords. And this is coming into our first stop in New Zealand, and just the lighting just is, to me, quite stunning, the way that the sunrise, I actually got up for sunrises, played on the water and against the clouds. We went on a short excursion, and this gentleman had been driving this boat for quite a few years, to the point where he no longer needed to do it with his hands, he could do it with his feet. He was steering the feet, and he was quite comfortable with that, and of course then we were too. But he was taking us to a special place to see the albatross. Now, albatross have a huge wingspan, and they just look adorable. You could see that they almost have like a mascara eyebrow over their eyes. And I don't know if you saw recently in the news that there is an albatross, female albatross named Wisdom, who is, I think, in her 70s, and recently had another chick, and she's raising another chick. And that happens to be in South America, near Chile. This is the view of the lighthouse looking over, and you can barely see it, but all over that prominence are albatross nests. And as you get closer, you can see them. You can definitely hear them from far away. Another albatross. One of the other stops we made was quite a surprise, and because it had a rose garden. Oh, and it was a lovely rose garden. It was called the Trevor Griffiths Rose Garden, and it was amazing because of all the different hybrids that were available there for viewing. This was the stairs you could take because the elevator was not working. Yeah, so this is the elevator that wasn't working, and so of course they also made a stairs available. But all over the world, elevators are not working. Another view, and I thought this was nice because you can just barely make out some of the moon over there, the crescent moon. And it's a little bit different angle because we were down under. Yeah. One of the places we went, and this was in Wellington, was Zealandia. It's a fascinating place because they've been able to create a perimeter around a couple thousand acres. And inside, they've been trying to return some of the animals that were living in New Zealand when the adventurers came over and brought in all their cats and dogs and made it tough for these other animals to live. So they have a perimeter with a high fence, and they keep all of the feral cats, dogs, and other unwanted animals out. And these animals are actually able to thrive, and they're starting to replace the natural areas with some of the animals that were living there previously, which is quite a feat to do. And one of those animals is this. It's a taka. And it's a bird, and it kind of, you could see how it doesn't look like it flies very well, and it doesn't. And it was preyed upon by not only the people that came over, but then the animals that they brought with them. So, but they've been able to raise the taka and start to reintroduce them into different areas of New Zealand. They're adorable, and this particular one, the legs of that you see right there, this person was actually one of the keepers at the Zealandia, and of course, whenever they saw her legs, they thought it was food time. So, so it was easy to get a picture of the takas. One of the other things that it struck me about New Zealand, and you might have found this too when you were there, was the culture. And once a year, they celebrate their culture by taking their traditional canoes and traveling from one part of the country to another, to the Waitangi area for their celebration of the treaty signing. And they do the dance, you know, the haka dance. And I'm not going to submit you to that, but it's not unlike the ones that the Maori Hawaiians do. So this is, we're gonna try something a little different here. The next slide is a video, and I'm going to switch over to the video and attempt to play the music. I'll give you a little heads up that it's all bells and drums, and that these I was in a museum. They were playing the music, and it of course had an audience over here watching, and I was up on a second level. So let's see if this works. I'm not sure if it will. So I'm supposed to turn off my microphone. Okay, I think that worked. You barely heard it, but we were lucky enough that they were giving a performance that particular day at the museum. This next slide is a picture of the Treaty of Waitangi, and what's key about this is it's been defaced. Just about a month before we went on our cruise, a group of activists went in and spray painted, and they had people hanging from the rafters on ropes, and they were spray painting. Nobody stopped them when they were doing this, but it's because there's a conflict between the interpretation of the treaty between the English and the natives that were living there, and each side not now agreeing on the language that was used back in 18-something. And mostly it has to do with sovereignty and who controls the land, that the natives think that they should control the land, and the way the English are reading it is that they would control the land. So they made a conscious decision not to repair the defacement, the vandalism on this, so that everybody would see that yes, there is continuing conflict over it, and that they hope to come to some resolution, but they didn't want to just clean it up. We went to Napier in New Zealand, which is a lovely town, and one of the nice things about it is that they have all these vintage cars and people that dress up in vintage clothing to come out and greet the ship. So it was quite a sight. One of the things that we did in Napier was go on a bird tour. And this particular bird tour, the gentleman that took us is a well-respected ornithologist, and he's written more than one book, and he actually splits his time between Vermont and New Zealand. And he took us out to see a lot of the birds, and this is one of them that they're just adorable. This is a stilt. And this is one of their national birds. It's you can just see he's just looking at me, just considering, do I fly away, or do I take more pictures of me? You know. And then little pipits. We would go, he took us to exactly where everything was, up into the mountains, up into the areas where these little birds are. And this surprisingly enough, is a hang glider launch ramp. So people will launch themselves off this to go hang gliding over this expanse. So that takes a lot of guts, I think. They have it's the Hawke's Bay Hang Gliding and Paragliding Club. I hope their insurance is paid up. But beautiful vistas from up there. And this is the group of us that went out, and you can't see it because I'm covering up the license plate, but it says Birder. His license plate says Birder. Not only did we go birding, but we also enjoyed some of the other things that New Zealand has to offer. It is a volcanic area. They have natural occurring thermal geysers, and we went to the hot salt water pools to enjoy that. So it's all heated by geothermal activity. And there's the mount that we walked to go to the spa. But you could see, it's not too far, and it's a beautiful little day. The boats are getting ready to go out, and it's a nice beach to walk along. One of the other things we went to, and this was another stunning thing for bird watchers and animal lovers in general, is Tiritamangi. And it's off the coast of New Zealand, near Auckland. So in Auckland, you get on a ferry and it takes you over to this island. And this island is specifically a preserve, just like Zealandia, how they prevented any interloping species to come, and they're trying to reconnect with the species that belong there and encourage them to go on and propagate. So you have to wash your feet before you get on the ferry, because they want to try and keep any kind of microbes that you might bring with you on the mainland. And we saw these beautiful birds. This is a bellbird, and it's one of the birds that you would see in that area. Yeah, and I did. Oh, okay. And this is a tui, T-U-I. And he's adorable too, because he's got this little puff of white right near his throat. And yes, it is a set of feathers. Beautiful view from Tiritamangi back to the mainland, and you can see Auckland off in the distance. So it's quite a distance away, but it's a trip that was like a do-it-yourself excursion. There was no ship excursion or anything. We just went on our own. And another bird. This is not a bellbird, but I can't remember it because I'm too excited. While we were there at Tiritamangi, they also had a group of school kids. So we were there in their summer, so it was their summer break, and this was a summer camp outing. So these kids were all there to enjoy the island and walk around and explore, and then learn something about their heritage. Back on Auckland, we went walking around, and they were getting ready for Chinese New Year, so all these beautiful lanterns were hanging about. So one of the things I do when I go traveling is collect pressed pennies. You've seen the machines. You put in a penny and a couple quarters, spin the dial, and you get a pressed penny. So there's a pressed penny machine. Aren't I excited? And we're right next to the needle. So this actually is in the gift shop of the needle. You can go up to the top of the needle and look over and see the vistas. But the pressed penny machine was what I was there for. And it was also Easter, so of course they had their Easter displays out. One of the things that is kind of neat to do when you're in New Zealand is go to the All Blacks Club. And so we were there in Auckland, and they had an All Blacks experience. And I think it's kind of funny how they got their name, the All Blacks. Does anybody know that, okay, it may or may not be true, but evidently the team from New Zealand showed up to play rugby, and they were just dressed in all black. They didn't have stripes or white or any color. It was just all blacks, and that's how they got their name, the All Blacks. Yes. Oh. You sure that wasn't just because of your headgear? Yeah. Yes, I once went to school with a young lady, and her boyfriend played rugby, and he had a bumper sticker that said, "Play rugby, give blood." It's a tough sport. So one of our last stops, they were actually doing a little regatta, and you can see that we had plenty of wind. These little boats were really skimming around, and they had just made the turn around that last buoy. Okay, so this is part of my experience that I'm going to share with you, that on the ship, they have art all over the place. And on certain of the older ships for Holland America, they have audio tapes for you to wander around and find the art that's hidden or not hidden. Now, this one actually is hidden. This little girl with the teacup on her head, she's paper mache, and you would only see it if you went to the club that they have for the teenagers and the younger people. And so I may not fall in that category, but I like to embrace that. And so I was able to find the teacup, the girl with the teacup. Some of the other art that was there, just this stunning set of panels that were initially just small panels but he was able to recreate them in a larger sense. So these are just gorgeous. Sadly, my photography doesn't do them justice. So we went on to Tonga, where they greeted us with a dance. I'm not going to run another video, but they certainly practiced a lot, and they were quite skilled at what they were doing. Now, this was a surprise visit. We weren't supposed to be able to go because the country had decided that ships over 1,000 passengers were too big, that they weren't going to take them anymore. But Bora Bora let us come in. And we did have a surprise visit at Bora Bora. And coming in, it was the sunrise was really quite spectacular. Oh, yes, one of the things we enjoy doing is the trivia. And I'm sure a lot of you are pretty good at the trivia too. And Joanne did really well at the Dutch one. Go figure. And they have a little thing every night where they have orange night. So you have to dress up in some sort of orange, and that is the captain of the ship. Here we are coming into Bora Bora. So I went snorkeling there, and you could tell that somebody spent some time and arranged the shells. And it really is that blue. It isn't just because of changes in the quality of the color. Just amazing. So on to another place, and with some crested terns. And this guy, yes, he had just finished his lunch and is moving on. But at the same time, you could see the sun setting on the mountains, and it's quite, I think, stunning the way the colors work. Weather off in the distance, and another sunset, and of course, rainbows, plenty of rainbows. And we were in Hawaii, and we went snorkeling. This is the Intrepid ship that was taking out. Thank goodness it wasn't called the Minnow. But we saw some beautiful corals, and this was probably my personal best snorkeling event in the French Polynesian Islands. So, and you can just see some of the fish and all the corals. And this is a fish that it's got a face like a dog. It's a wrasse. beautiful blue tangs. Oops. Just the way the light plays on the coral. And another blue tang. My attempt at an art shot to get the surface of the water included. And another, of course, this one's out of focus. More angelfish. You can see them, black, white. And it's always kind of surprising when you've got a moon setting and the sun is rising on the other side. So it gives it enough ambient light so you can pick up everything. When we went to Tahiti at the city of Papeete, I noticed that they had set up these little cages, and in the cages they had seeded them with coral. And so from the pier, you can look down and see fish swimming around because they had seeded it with coral. It doesn't show very well in the water, and it's poor magnification. But so of course when you're in Papeete, you have to go to the Marsh Municipal, which is the main market. And this is where I bought my ukulele. This is the lady that sold me my ukulele. I brought it the last time, and you can see, you know, how it's, you can't really see very well, but it's got roofing staples, and the strings are fishing line. So you use what you got available. And there's another sunset. One of our other last stops is coming up on Nuka Hiva. This is actually a reverse lighthouse. It's set up with piles of wood, and they set fire to it if they're in SOS instead of having a lighthouse that's continually flashing. It's a reverse lighthouse that's made active if they're in trouble. And that's what it looks like closer. Sunsets are, you know, stunning from a ship. And this is the ship as we're in Nuka Hiva. Oh yes, and towel animals. So I thought this was adorable. That they set up an alligator with all her little baby eggs. After we got off the ship, we went to Ohio to experience the total solar eclipse that was held. It was back in April 8th of this past year. And so we went to Avon Lake, where it was going to be a total eclipse, and it was for more than 4 minutes. It was really stunning. We were ready. We had our coffee at the hand and also our special glasses so we wouldn't burn our retinas out. It was perfect. We did it from the parking lot, so that was okay. This is one of my poor photographs that I took, but here's a photograph that I found on the internet, and you could see how stunning that was. Uh-oh, it's the green flash, so that means it's the end of the presentation.
More of Sydney.
Oh, okay.
We went to the Sydney Zoo. It was the most famous zoo, and we spent an entire day there. Fabulous animals.
Yep. They're everywhere.
Stopped in Tasmania and got to hold all the animals. They had a special feeding area with buckets so that we could get food and feed them. That was fun.
Yep, they're a little stinky too, aren't they? Yeah. So with that, I'll make sure to highlight that Larry's going to be talking in 2 weeks.
what is called the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and the peace that has existed for 26 years and holding. So I'll be showing mostly about a half an hour video that really tells the whole story with the major folks that were involved in that peacemaking. No, Gary Mason and some of the clergy and Catholic clergy that led the way, and then eventually the politicians got involved. No, that's true. That's true. But it was the local folks, both sides. It was the clergy, at once reluctant and so forth. The video will tell the whole story, but the main thing is they were the ones that began the process, and Hume came in after it was pretty much done.
Okay. 94 days. Yes. I have a Panasonic Luminix. It's a hybrid bridge camera. So I was just lucky. I was pressing the button and it captured many exposures, and one of them had it. Yes, John.
It was the easiest country I've ever driven around in. It was very friendly, no barriers whatsoever. The people were great. We drove almost to the South Island. It was a great country to visit, and if you ever get a chance to go to that part of the world, I'd definitely recommend it. It's very affordable, and it's beautiful, as Debbie so well put. More sheep than people.
That's funny. You've been there then too. You know, there's plenty of sheep. So, something else?
Okay. You showed a bellbird in New Zealand, right? Yes. In Costa Rica, they have more varieties, probably like New Zealand, more varieties of local animals and birds and so forth. So we would go to a rainforest, and you could hear we saw the quetzal, which is the royal quetzal, which is a beautifully plumed bird. But the bellbird would sit up way at the top of a tree, and you could hear that bell resonating. So it's amazing to think if that's the same kind of bellbird, but you can hear like a bong. That's my demonstration.
Well, repeat that, please.
Did you go to the Opera House?
To the Sydney Opera House. Yes, I did, and I learned that it wasn't necessarily the easiest thing to build, that the architect had a vision and then left it to the engineers to execute that vision, but he didn't know what it took to work with concrete. So not unlike a lot of architects will have a vision that is difficult to build, but it's an amazing place. Yeah, the basements, the warrens underneath, all the rooms, and when you're coming into Sydney Harbor and seeing the Opera House, you know where you are. Yep. So, here we go. Here's Nancy Tebby.
I took a music trip to Sydney a few years back, and we sang a concert in the Opera House. It was so exciting. And you almost can't wrap your brain around the fact that you're there. So I've told people this story, but I'll repeat it. Being tall and an alto, I was way up in the back, of course, where the air is thin. So when it was time for a break, I didn't want to have to go all the way down the stairs. I figured by the time I got to the restroom, the break would be over. So there was a door behind me, and I went out that way. It was totally black, totally quiet. You could look down and see the water of Sydney Harbor. And all I could think of was, the Phantom of the Opera is here. I went back up through the door and made the trek.
Oh, scary stuff.
When we were at the Opera House, there was a ballet that we got to watch. So that was fun.
It's amazing what they can do on tow. So with that, I'm going to ask Larry to push the button so the YouTube will stop. And thank you very much for coming. Yes. Well, no, we stayed in the report instead of going to Christchurch.
On the corner of streets in Christchurch, there was a memorial for those who were lost in the volcano. Very simple. Chairs on an intersection of the street representing everybody that was lost in that volcano. And of course, there are some cities in New Zealand that have comparable names to those here, like Dunedin, Florida. So we've been there. And Deb, didn't you say you climbed the bridge in Sydney? We did. We did. John did. Yeah. That's an experience. Huh? Oh, yeah, we were worried about that, but we were lucky. We were lucky. It is daunting. It's an experience, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. Deb, thank you very much. Any other questions for Deb? Any other announcements? Well, thank you again very much.